The crimson dragon and I floated in the sky, glaring at each other. Velgrynd instantly shifted into her human form, and the battle was very suddenly underway. She fired nuclear cannon strikes at me in rapid-fire succession, slashing away with her azure dragon sword. What was the difference between her human and dragon forms? It mostly came down to the difference in defensive force. On offense, they were exactly the same, but the human form was far more energy efficient. That connects directly to being able to fight for longer, so for extended combat sessions, the human form is likely the way to go. But Dragon Mode had an undeniable advantage of its own, the sheer hugeness of it. The scale of her attacks was proportionate to the size of her body, the same power, but a much wider range. That let her take on large numbers of opponents simultaneously, and even if it were just one target, it'd be pretty tough to avoid attacks from such a gigantic creature. Then there's the defense, the real clincher. Finishing off someone so huge required an attack equally large in scale. A sword was unlikely to work, and most magic was just too small in scale to matter. Very little magic worked against true dragons to begin with, but even ignoring that, any magic devised for human-sized targets was useless. It had to work big, or else it just wouldn't cause much damage. So going into Dragon Mode was likely the stronger bet, but Velgrynd chose her human form anyway. And I could guess the reason. Presumably she is seeking to abandon all defense so she may finish you off, Master. Looks like it, huh? I'll go with that, then. Velgrynd's fiendish rage only served to enhance her beauty. All that rage was focused on her blade, and now she swung it with enough force to cut me in half. But I wasn't about to take that lying down. Leaving my magic countermeasures to Ciel, I charged at Velgrynd with my own beloved blade, a straight sword of pure crimson steel. Her azure dragon blade was a kind of broadsword. She hadn't been hiding it, but instead created it just now via create material. Its grade was God class, but so was mine, apparently upgrading itself for its new true dragon owner. Velgrynd's weapon was a threat, but I was hardly outclassed. In fact, with a shrill ting, Velgrynd's azure sword shattered. I was pretty surprised myself, but it must have been even worse for her. What did you do there? She asked, once she moved a prudent distance away. I didn't mean to do anything. All I did was try to parry her attack. She was really barking up the wrong tree with that question. That is the difference in each weapon's performance. My master's straight sword is a masterpiece forged with the heart and soul of Curb. Velgrynd's is an easily manufactured model, a mere amalgamation of magic heals. It is God class due to the sheer number of magic heals involved, but in essence, it is a blunt cudgel of a sword. That's how it is, huh? I knew there could be pretty stark differences between weapons graded at the same level, but I didn't expect this much difference in the God class. I suppose wielding the same weapon for a long time, really building a relationship, pays off in the end. That's a real good lesson to learn. My current outfit was made with create material, too, after all. Just because it's rated God class doesn't mean I should expect the world of it. Well, I just found out that even in the same weapon class, sometimes the difference can be like night and day. The one you just created turned out to be no match for mine. I doubted that it'd be enough to have her give up, but I told her anyway. Velgrynd, who was no fool, seemed to conclude that I wasn't lying, but maybe she wasn't willing to accept it yet, because she kept on producing azure swords from thin air to slash at me with. Only after all of them got rent to pieces did she seem ready to accept reality. Seething in frustration, she promptly moved on to her next attempt. If materialized weapons were useless, I suppose she'd just have to rely on her own body next. Claws extended out from her hands as she assumed a kung fu style stance. Seeing this, I put my sword away. What are you doing? I was experimenting, of course. I wanted to see how I was progressing, so I stopped relying on my sword. I'm taking you on barehanded. It'd just be bullying the weak if I used a weapon. A fight like this is all about goading your opponent. If it made her lose her cool, that would be enough to assure victory for me right there. Don't you look down on me. And it worked. It was almost funny how easily Velgrynd fell into my trap. Now all I had to do was treat this like a chess game, and not make any blatantly bad moves. Velgrynd's claw attacks were fast, impossible to follow with your eyes. But I had extraordinary perception speed. Ever since I gave Raphael the name Ciel, my mind accelerate skill had been increasing. It was once 1,000,000 times faster than reality, but now that was up to several 100,000,000 times. I could even follow the traversal of rays going at the speed of light. I couldn't move at that speed, mind you, but that didn't mean I couldn't avoid this attack. This speed boost applied to the casting of magic as well. Spatial transport now worked nearly 1,000 times faster than before. In other words, I could escape from even a light speed attack with a quick teleport, as long as the attack was a certain distance away. 1 second could be prolonged into 10 or so years, so it was like watching a completely stationary world. It'd be tough for normal people to withstand, given that they couldn't move either, but through the activation of Mind Accelerate at certain key points, Ciel could overcome this for me. It didn't really matter how fast Velgrynd could move. Now that I was at this point, swordsmanship or martial arts weren't necessary for me. I could just push her down with brute force. Velgrynd's super speed attack was closing in. It was going several hundred times the speed of sound. The old me would have doubtlessly had a hard time with it. No, it wasn't worth breaking a sweat over. Too slow, I said, goading her further as I spatial transported my way behind her. But she was no slouch, either. Anticipating this move, she immediately reacted to it. Pretty tough cookie, I thought. She really was the best of the best, and there was no discounting that. Oh, you think so? I doubt you can move quicker than me. Is that an application of spatial transport, then? It's impressive you can move so naturally with it without creating any spatial rifts, but once I know the trick, I can deal with it. I thought my taunting would enrage her further, but she was calmer than I expected. That's Veldora's sister for you, I suppose, but Ciel anticipated this as well. And the next move she was likely going to make was. But now that I've intervened to keep a given space fixed in time, no one can teleport themselves at all within. Too bad, huh? That's the only way for her to counteract me, isn't it? Velgrynd had spatial transport as well, of course, and she could intervene and put her own rules over a large swath of space around her. Transport via dominate space was no longer possible for me. I could force it anyway, but there wasn't much point if she knew where I'd be exiting. It remained a potential escape route for me, too, but again, she'd know where I'd be going, so it was pretty meaningless. Now that teleport type abilities were out of the picture, that just left physical speed to decide this. Velgrynd now had the perfect environment to seal her victory. That meant her next move was. I never thought I'd have to use my true clincher moves on someone like you. You think stopping my movement was enough to let you win? Let me show you just how wrong you are. You're a brat, aren't you? If you hadn't killed my boy, I might have liked you. But this is the end now. Velgrynd took a stance. Kicking against thin air, she turned herself into a supersonic bullet, accelerating further as it shot forward. Cardinal acceleration. But the shouted voice was already well behind her. Velgrynd made herself into a crimson meteor, approaching me at the physical limit of sublight speed. It was changing trajectory, making this transformation allowed her to function as a flaming ball of wrath, capable of going in any direction. This, I suppose, was cardinal acceleration in its purest form. Not a straight line attack, but more of a guided missile that could go anywhere it wanted. The combination of teeming energy and pondering mass, it was the ultimate in destructive attacks. Ciel had thoroughly analyzed cardinal acceleration, perfectly discerning its true nature for me. Velgrynd was terrifying enough, but Ciel had her beat for sure. I created a monas like this on what was basically a whim, and that whim would spell the flame dragon's defeat. As I planned, Master, I have deployed Belzebuth around your entire perimeter. No matter the angle of contact, predation on Velgrynd will proceed without complications. And that was exactly right. If I tried to eat a sentient target any normal way, it'd be real hard if it tried to resist me. And this was a true dragon. No matter how much of an effort Ciel put in, Belzebuth-based predation should have been impossible. Except that, by her own will, Velgrynd had transformed herself into a meteor-style projectile. All of her energy was placed into her attack, and thanks to that, her resistance to things like this had been greatly reduced. And here was the result. Velgrynd was now quarantined in my complex space. How in the world did that happen? I heard her say. The moment she thought she finished me off, she was in a completely empty space. For Velgrynd, it must have been difficult to grasp the situation at first. I'm sure it'd take some time for her to realize she had been defeated. Better spell it out for her. I won. You just sit there and be quiet, okay? I lost. That's what happened, yeah. And you can't escape my complex space, so I don't even think your parallel existence can exchange any energy with you. According to Dr. Ciel, I had consumed over 50% of Velgrynd's magicules. The replication standing by next to Veldora had about 20%, and the remaining amount, nearly 30%, had been expended and needed to be recovered. Apparently she could recover around 10% of her magicules per day, so she'd be back at just under 50% in 3 days, but since I had this replication inside of me, she wouldn't recover quite that much. Her own sentience existed in both replications, which made exact calculations a little complex, but either way, I just weakened Velgrynd a hell of a lot. If you want the full story, ask Veldora, alright. Veldora, what are you talking about? Velgrynd seemed puzzled, but I think it'd be quicker to hear about this from the horse's mouth. Qua ha ha ha. It is I, my sister. I hope you are faring well. Doesn't really look like it, but... Veldora, you weren't gone after all. Great. Hopefully they can talk things over and come to some kind of détente about this. So I now had complete victory over Velgrynd, capturing the majority of her magicules in complex space.